I've driven bus 47 for 17 years. Through blizzards and heat waves, down winding roads lined with cornfields, past rusted mailboxes and shuttered gas stations, I've watched hundreds of kids climb aboard, messy-haired, sleepy-eyed, often with backpacks slung crooked across their shoulders and dreams still half-formed. But only one child ever made me feel like I was driving straight into a storm I couldn't see. Her name was Lina. She first boarded bus 47 in the dead of winter, February, when frost coated the windows and even the sun seemed reluctant to show up. She was small, thin like a sapling with tangled brown hair and eyes too old for her face. She sat in seat number 7 every day, always alone, always silent. And every morning, like clockwork, I'd glance into the mirror above the windshield and see the same thing. Her tiny body hunched against the window and tears slipping down her cheeks. I didn't ask. Not at first. It's not that I didn't care. I just didn't know what to say. I'm a bus driver, not a therapist. I'd been alone for most of my life, too. Never married, no kids, not even a goldfish at home to feed. My days were a string of routes and schedules and half-listened to AM radio shows. I wasn't the kind of man little girls cried to, and I wasn't sure I could carry the weight of their sadness even if they did. But every day the sight of her got harder to ignore. Her tears weren't loud. She didn't sob or sniffle. They were the kind of tears that made no sound, the kind that only come from a heart that's already used to breaking. And that kind of sorrow has a way of seeping into you like cold through the seams of a winter coat. Weeks passed. I started leaving the heater on longer than usual, making sure her seat was warm. I'd pack an extra banana or granola bar in my lunch and leave it on the seat behind her, pretending I forgot it. She never looked up, never said thank you, but I kept doing it anyway. Because kindness isn't about recognition. Sometimes it's just about trying to soften the edges of someone else's pain. Then one morning, as the frost clung stubbornly to the windshield, I parked outside her stop and waited. And waited. 5 minutes passed. No Lina. I was about to pull away when I saw her, running without a coat, arms wrapped around herself, shivering as the wind bit through her clothes. She clambered onto the bus, breathless, her cheeks flushed from cold and something else, fear. "Hey there, you okay?" I asked without thinking. She nodded quickly, but her eyes were glassy and fresh tears were already building. That day she didn't sit in seat 7. She sat up front, right behind me. And for the first time in all those months, I couldn't hold my silence anymore. "Sweetheart," I said gently, keeping my eyes on the road. "Why are you always cryin'?" There was a long pause. I wasn't sure she'd answer. Then in the smallest voice I'd ever heard she said, "My mom and dad died. In a fire. I don't have a home no more." The words hit like a blow to the chest. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. My mouth went dry. I wanted to ask more. Where was she living? Who was taking care of her? But I knew better than to push too hard. Instead I just nodded, and after a moment I said, "I'm real sorry, honey." She didn't speak again, but when she got off the bus that afternoon she turned and looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time I saw a flicker of something behind those tired eyes. Not hope exactly, but maybe the memory of it. That night I couldn't sleep. Her words echoed in my head. No home. No more. I lived in a 2-bedroom house on the edge of town. It wasn't much, just a creaky old place with chipped paint and a porch that sagged when you stepped on it, but it was warm, safe, quiet. I thought about that empty second bedroom. About the sandwich I never finished. About how much time I spent alone. The next day I called the school and asked to speak with the principal. I told them about Lina. About what she'd said. About my worry that something was wrong. I braced myself for red tape, for indifference. But something surprising happened. The principal, a kind woman named Mrs. Whitmore, listened carefully, then said, "Mr. Grady, we've been concerned too. She's been living with an aunt who's not responding to our calls. There's been talk of neglect. Would you be open to fostering her?" I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to, but because the thought scared me. What did I know about raising a child? I was 63. I owned 2 sweaters and watched the news at 6 every night. What if I failed her? But then I remembered that fragile voice. "I don't have a home no more." "Yes," I said. "I'd like to try." That was the day everything changed. It was harder than I expected. Lina moved in with me 2 weeks after that phone call. The paperwork, the interviews, the home visits, they all felt like a whirlwind of confusion and second-guessing. I wasn't sure I knew how to be a father, But it turned out I wasn't alone. Social workers and counselors came to help, teaching me the basics of raising a child who had already seen too much for her age. The first few nights, Lina didn't sleep much. I had the feeling she was used to silence. Deep, unsettling silence, and the sounds of a home being lived in were unfamiliar. She'd curl up in the corner of her bed, her knees drawn to her chest, staring at the walls as though expecting them to crumble. I'd sit in the living room trying to read the paper or watch TV, but I couldn't concentrate. The quiet between us felt vast, like an ocean of things unsaid. The first time I tried to make her breakfast, I burned the toast. The eggs were too rubbery. She didn't complain. She just stared at the plate, pushing the food around with her fork, picking at it without really eating. "Lina," I said, my voice thick with uncertainty. "You can tell me what you like. I'll try to make it better." She didn't answer, just shrugged and took a small bite. I didn't push her. Some days I'd sit beside her on the couch while she played with her toys, and I'd try to make small talk. I asked about her favorite things: cartoons, games, food. She always gave short answers, as though she was afraid of getting too comfortable. But I kept at it. I didn't know what else to do. The nights were the hardest. After I'd tuck her in, I'd hear her crying, muffled and broken. I didn't know how to comfort her, didn't know how to help her heal from the years of loss. But I would always be there, sitting by the door, listening, waiting. And every now and then she would ask in the middle of the night, "Tom, will I ever stop feeling this way?" I didn't have an answer. But I always told her the same thing: "I'm here. You're safe. We'll figure it out together." That became our mantra: together. Slowly, bit by bit, we started building something. I'd walk her to school every morning like I'd done for so many other kids, but now she was the one holding my hand. And every afternoon when she climbed aboard bus 47, she no longer cried. Her face was still quiet, still full of secrets, but she didn't cry. She didn't look so broken. But it wasn't just the tears I had to worry about. It was her heart. I wasn't sure how to teach her about the world, about hope and love and trust. How could I? I had my own struggles with them. But slowly I began to learn. The first time I took her shopping for new clothes, she stood in the dressing room staring at herself in the mirror. She didn't speak a word, but I could see the conflict in her eyes. She was used to hand-me-downs, to clothes that didn't fit, to never having enough. I had to fight the urge to just walk away to avoid the discomfort. But I stood there, gently telling her that she deserved better, that she could choose anything she wanted. She picked out a blue dress, soft and simple, but when she came out of the dressing room, her face had changed. The awkwardness was gone. There was a small flicker of pride in her eyes, as though she hadn't known it was possible to feel that way. I tried to smile, but it felt like the weight of the world was still there, just hidden behind that tiny spark of confidence. As the months passed, Lina's silence became less of a barrier and more of a quiet strength. She wasn't loud, wasn't a chatterbox like some of the other kids. But when she spoke, it was meaningful. I learned to listen in a way I never had before. And then one day, when I was sitting in the kitchen sipping my coffee, I heard her voice. A voice that was strong, a little shaky, but full of conviction. "Tom," she said, standing in the doorway, "I want to go to school. I want to learn everything. I want to be a doctor." I looked at her, surprised. She hadn't spoken of dreams like this before. But there was no doubt in my heart. She had something inside of her, something fierce and beautiful. Maybe she'd always had it, but I was just starting to see it. "Do you think I can?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I put down my coffee cup, my hands trembling a little as I reached out to her. "You can do anything you want," I said. "You're smart and you're strong. And I'll help you every step of the way." That was the turning point. From then on, everything shifted. Lina started coming home from school with her backpack full of new books, her face full of excitement. She stayed up late studying, asking for help with math and science. There were still moments of quiet pain, days when she'd retreat into herself, but she was learning how to trust again. She was learning that there were people in the world who would fight for her. I was one of those people. I wasn't perfect. I didn't know all the right answers. But I loved her. I loved her with all the power I had, with the same quiet, steadfast love I had always given to my bus riders. And that love, that patient, unwavering love, was healing her. Years passed, and with each one, Lina blossomed into someone I couldn't have imagined back when she first stepped onto bus 47, broken, alone, and so full of sadness. She was no longer the quiet, distant girl who hid behind a wall of silence. She was a young woman now, full of life, ambition, and a quiet grace I had never seen before. By the time she reached high school, I couldn't recognize the girl who once sat in the front seat of my bus, crying herself to sleep every night. Now she laughed more, talked to her classmates, and had dreams as big as the world itself. She had a circle of friends, a part-time job at a local cafe, and an infectious determination that pulled everyone around her up. Me. I watched her with pride, knowing that I had given her a chance when no one else would. Still, there were scars. They weren't visible, but I knew they were there. They weren't just from the loss of her parents, though that pain never really left her. It was the invisible scars from growing up too fast, from learning too early that the world could be unkind. She rarely talked about her past, but I could see it in the way she sometimes flinched when a door slammed too loudly or when someone raised their voice in frustration. I never pushed her to talk. Sometimes just being there, being the father she'd never had, was enough. But every once in a while, when she was sitting at the kitchen table, looking over her notes or absent-mindedly stirring her coffee, I'd catch her eyes drifting far away, and I'd know that something was haunting her. One evening after she graduated high school, she came to me, her hands trembling as she held a letter in her lap. She had just received an acceptance letter from a prestigious college in another state, a full scholarship for medical school. The dream she told me about all those years ago. Tom, I don't know if I should go, she said, her voice cracking. She wasn't looking at me. She was staring at the letter as though it might disappear if she blinked. I'm scared. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? I put down the book I was reading and looked at her, my heart swelling with a pride I couldn't put into words. You're scared because you care, I said quietly, and that's good. It means you want to give it everything. You've already made it this far, Lina. You've shown me and the world just how strong you are. You don't need to prove anything to anyone, least of all to yourself. She finally looked up at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of uncertainty and hope. But what if it's too much? What if I get there and I can't do it? I smiled, feeling a knot in my chest loosen. If you fall, we'll pick you up. Just like we always have. Her tears fell freely then, but they weren't the kind that came from pain. They were the tears of release, the ones that happen when someone finally feels free enough to let go. She threw her arms around me, her body trembling in the way only a child can when they finally understand that they are loved. I held her tight, my own tears threatening to break through, but I didn't let them fall. I needed her to see strength, to feel it in my embrace. "You're ready, Lina. You've always been ready," I whispered. She left for college in the fall, and I won't lie, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. The house felt quieter. The rooms felt bigger. But I wasn't sad for her. I was proud. I was proud of the woman she'd become, and I knew that the world was hers for the taking. Over the next few years, I kept in touch with her through phone calls and text messages. I was still driving bus 47, still picking up other kids. But now, every time I passed that stop where Lina used to stand, I smiled to myself, knowing that she was out there changing the world. She was working toward her medical degree, volunteering at clinics, and slowly, piece by piece, making her dreams come true. She never forgot about me either. She called on weekends, told me about her classes, about her new friends, and even shared her frustrations. She never stopped being my daughter. Then one afternoon, several years after she'd left, I received a letter in the mail. A thick envelope, sealed with a professional's wax, from her school. My heart skipped a beat as I opened it, reading the words that changed everything. "Dear Mr. Grady, we are pleased to inform you that your daughter Lina has been selected as the recipient of the prestigious Dr. Emily Wells Scholarship for her outstanding contributions to the medical field and her remarkable journey of overcoming adversity. Lina has asked us to reach out and inform you of this achievement, as she is deeply grateful for the love and support you've shown her over the years." I sat there, my hands shaking. I couldn't believe it. She had done it, not just for herself but for the both of us. My little girl, the one who had cried in the back of my bus, the one who had no home, she was going to be a doctor. A few days later, Lina called me. I could hear the excitement in her voice, but there was something else there too. Something softer, more genuine. "Tom," she said, "I got the scholarship. But more than that, I wanted to say thank you. I never could have done this without you." My chest tightened. I couldn't hold back anymore. "No, Lina. You did this. You always had it in you." There was a long pause on the other end of the line before she spoke again. Her voice was steady, full of resolve. "I wouldn't have made it without you, Tom. You're the one who gave me a home when I had nothing. You're the one who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself." Tears welled up in my eyes, but I didn't care anymore. I let them fall silently because sometimes the greatest reward for a life of sacrifice is the knowledge that you gave someone else the chance to become who they were meant to be. Years passed, and the girl I had once carried home on my bus had become the woman who carried hope for others. Lina finished medical school, and as I sat in the small hospital room where she had her first shift as a doctor, I realized something. The journey had come full circle. The little girl who had cried every day on bus 47, who had no home, who had no one, she had grown into someone who now had everything. And it wasn't just the degrees or the titles or the accolades. It was the kindness she had inherited from her own quiet resilience and the love that had been poured into her when she needed it most. When I received the invitation to her graduation, it was one of the proudest moments of my life. I was there, sitting in the back of the auditorium, watching her walk across the stage to receive her degree. The applause that echoed through the room felt like a roar to me. It wasn't just for her academic success. It was for everything she had overcome. Later that evening at the celebration dinner, Lina found me among the crowd, her face glowing, her eyes brimming with emotion. "Tom," she said, her voice trembling as she pulled me into a hug. "I couldn't have done this without you. You were there when I had nothing, when I didn't know how to believe in myself. You gave me a home when I had nowhere to go." Tears welled up in my eyes as I hugged her back, feeling the weight of those years. All the sacrifice, all the love, all the quiet patience. I had spent my whole life behind the wheel of a bus, seeing thousands of faces, but I had never truly understood the impact a single act of kindness could have until now. "You're my miracle," I whispered. "You always were." She smiled through her tears. "No, Tom. You were mine." The years didn't slow down. We had our fair share of struggles and setbacks, just like any family would. But those moments of hardship were tempered with the knowledge that no matter how dark things got, we had each other. And nothing, not even the weight of the past, could take that away from us. Lina went on to become a successful pediatrician. She specialized in working with children who had been abandoned or who had suffered deep emotional trauma, just as she had. It seemed that every part of her journey had been leading her to this point, to give back, to help others who had no one. And so, years after that first day I brought her into my home, she made a name for herself, not just as a doctor but as a person who understood the depths of pain and the healing power of love. She became a voice for children who had been overlooked, forgotten, or discarded. There was a day, a few months after she had started working at a children's hospital, when she took me to visit a young girl named Katie, a little patient who had been brought in with a rare condition. Katie was just like Lina once had been, alone, frightened, and utterly lost. I watched as Lina spoke to her with such tenderness, her eyes full of empathy and understanding. Katie looked at her with such trust, as if she knew somehow that Lina understood her in a way no one else could. It was a moment that left me breathless. "You're going to be okay, Katie," Lina said, her voice soft and confident. "I've been where you are. And I promise things will get better." The words felt like they were meant for both of them. And in that moment I saw the full circle. The same kindness and compassion I had given Lina all those years ago had now come back to her, and she was passing it on to someone else. As time went on, Lina began to share her story more openly with others. About her struggles, her pain, and the man who had given her a home when she had nothing. She was never ashamed of her past, but rather proud of how far she had come. And when she spoke, people listened. Not because she was some famous doctor, but because her story was real. It was full of heartbreak, yes, but also of incredible resilience and the power of one simple act of kindness to change a life. And one day, when I was walking her down the street after a long shift, she turned to me with a smile that lit up the entire world. "You know," she said, her voice light with amusement, "I've been thinking about how you always used to tell me I could do anything, that I could be anything I wanted." I laughed, remembering those words I had spoken to her so many years ago. "I meant it, Lina. I know you did. But Tom," she said, her eyes gleaming with a kind of deep gratitude, "I think I've finally figured it out." "What do you mean?" "I think I've been chasing the wrong thing for a long time," she said, her voice softening. "I thought it was all about success, about the career, the accolades. But now I realize, it's not about what I do. It's about the people I help, the lives I touch, the love I give. That's what really matters." I stopped walking, the weight of her words settling in my chest like a deep truth. "You're right," I said, smiling with pride. Lina had come full circle just like me. She had gone from the frightened, abandoned girl on bus 47 to a woman who was changing the world, not with titles or degrees, but with the power of compassion. And for me, there was no greater reward than knowing that I had helped give her that chance, that I had given her the love and the home that helped her believe in herself again.